third time that you've been on this podcast, and each of them has been very different. You were just on a few months ago, and you wanted to come on today because there's something that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So really, I've been waiting for a long time to do this, and nervous, and I felt like, this was the time to do it. We have season 2 of The Valley coming out shortly, and I feel like sometimes because there's so many cast members that the whole story of each person is not told, fully. And I kind of wanted to come out and kind of talk about the struggles that I've been going through for a very, very long time. And I kind of wanted everyone to know, this is what happened. I'm kind of coming. This is tough to say. So I am coming out that I'm an addict. I have substance issues, primarily with cocaine. Ooh, that's hard to say out loud. Yeah, I've been dealing with this for, I think, the last, on and off since I was 23. So I'm 45. So give or take, I've been, there was times where I would stop doing it, but then there was times where I'd go heavy on it. I think a lot of people who watched Vanderpump Rules over the years could kind of tell that I was on something. Obviously production and people, they didn't know what I was doing. Everything I was doing was on my own, but I was just, on that train, and I couldn't get off. And then people ask, do you have an alcohol problem too? I don't necessarily think I have an alcohol problem, but the two go hand in hand. So I can't do cocaine without drinking. So I just gave up both. And I'm proud to say I'm 82, 83 days sober right now, which is the longest I've ever gone in my life without either. So, well, not my life, without either. I'm sorry. This is the longest I've gone since I was 21 without, or just going this long without anything. And I got to say, it feels really, really good. But again, I just want to let people know, like, this is a really, really tough disease, and it's a really tough sickness. And it's I've been doing it for so long, and you can say hiding it, not necessarily hiding it, lying about it, forever. And I just had enough's enough. I mean, this year was probably the hardest year of my life. I would say my father's death was the hardest year until this year. I'm going through a divorce right now, which is extremely difficult. And that's when Brittany and I separated. That's when the addiction got worse. Now, I've always been doing it for a long time, but the addiction got worse during my divorce, during my separation. I literally lost control. I think at a point hit rock bottom, and I had to go to rehab. That's kind of where we're at right now. And then I got out, obviously, and here we are. But yeah, that's
a lot.
That's a lot. I mean, we'll get into more.
Yeah.
But I just want to stop there for a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, right. No,
that was a lot. I've never said this in my life. So to come out and say that I have an addiction, that I have a sickness that I have to work on the rest of my life is a really big deal for me. Obviously, I think if people known that there's something out, but for me to say that come out of my mouth it's a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Huge.
Good. And I know that you've wanted to be able to say this, but I know that you've also struggled saying it out loud.
Yeah, yeah, because I didn't think anybody would I think I would just say it and then I wouldn't really work on it. I think I've worked really, really hard on my sobriety. It didn't happen the first time. It, happened the second time. What I mean by that is I had to go to rehab twice, and we'll get into that later. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a sickness. It's a disease, and it's something that I have to work on for the rest of my life, unfortunately.
I want to focus, to begin with, on the second rehab stint, and we'll get into the first as well. What prompted you to get help the second time?
I got a lot out of it the first time, and then when I was out, I was like, okay, I can get this. There was an incident. Brittany and I were actually on their way to a doctor's appointment for our son, and her phone was connected to my car, and a man's name came up, and it just triggered me. I did slip after the first incident, and I did take substance the night before. And the next day is always the worst when you're after this. The next day is the worst. I lost it. I went crazy in the car, yelling. And the worst part about all of this, and this is why I checked myself in, is that my son was in the back seat. And that's when I knew, I'm like, I have a problem. It's still there. It's still there. Like, I was very aware. I was yelling, and then I turned my head, and I see my son back there. I'm just like, this was just utter disgust. Utter disgust. And Brittany was like, you need to go back. And I didn't even put up a fight. Like, the first time I kind of put up a little bit of a fight. This one I was like, you're right. You're right. I didn't put up a fight. I'm like, I gotta go back.
And then Brittany reached out to a few people, including Lori, your publicist, Ryan, your manager, and me. We talked about the incident. You agreed to go, and this was over the holidays, right? So it was a very dark time for you.
I got out. Yeah, it was, man, it was a very, very dark time. Yeah, I mean, again, worst year of my life. I can't even tell you. I got out. I didn't stay the full time. I ended up staying 17 days. I felt like, for me, that was enough. I was like, you know what? Another 14 is not going to do anything. I know that I'm good. I'm okay. I just needed to get back and be like, okay, for a second. I just needed to okay, remember why you were here the first time. You're back here for a second, regroup, and then get back out there. And I felt when I hit the 17th day, I'm like, you know what? I'm here. I'm done. I won't do it again. You won't touch. I'm done. I made a mistake. And I felt like it was the right decision for me at the time to leave right then. I was there on my own. I wasn't forced to be there. But I felt myself that I was ready to go.
I want to touch on a few things there. So first is when you got the diagnosis. So when you were told at the facility, look, this is like, did you know going in that you were going in for addiction? Did you think you were going in for behavior? Because
all of it. All of it. I was going to get to the bottom of it. Now, when myself and my manager and Lori, we all kind of came together and researched where I was going to go. I have such a great team, and we say, hey, listen, this is the best place for you because it kind of talks about everything: mental health, substance abuse, drug addiction, all that stuff. You're going to get everything out of this, and that's kind of what I needed because I personally don't think that drugs and alcohol are the problem for anybody. There's issues there that there's issues with their lives, and then people use to kind of mask the issues that they're going through. I'm a firm believer in drugs and alcohol are never the problem. People just don't fix their problems, so they're too lazy, and then they use drugs and alcohol to mask their issues instead of fixing things. And that was the problem. So I was in therapy the first time, 30 days, 7 hours of therapy a day for 6 days a week. I mean, it's intense. It's intense. And then you see doctors, and then you go to therapy, and then you go to personal therapy, then you go to group therapy, then you break for lunch, then you go for a walk, and then they allow you to go to the gym once a day, and there's a nurse that follows you to the gym. Like, this was just utterly embarrassing for me because I'm going to Crunch Gym, which is a very big gym, and people know who I am, and they're kind of looking at me, but they also see this nurse walking next to me. So it was like, it was tough. It was very, very, it broke me down. I got a lot out of it. Yes, I did slip when I got out the first time, but I learned so much the first time. It was my fault.
Well, you weren't sober the first time, right?
The first time I went through, I stayed sober for, I think, like a week or two after.
Yeah.
And then I started slowly going back into the game again. And I thought, okay, I can handle this. I can handle it now. I got a grip on it.
Because you were really at the time grappling with the bipolar diagnosis.
So we'll get into that. So
Yeah.
When I went in, I've always known something is wrong with me. I'm a very stubborn guy. I don't go to the doctor. I'm like my dad. I don't go to the doctor unless my arm's falling off. I'll just put some bleach on it. I refuse to go to the doctor for anything. I refuse to accept anything. I'm one of those guys, like, if I have cancer, don't tell me. Like, I don't want to know. And for years, I've known, everybody's told me, Jax, something's wrong with you. You're not all there, And, when my marriage was getting, that's been tough a lot, but when my marriage was getting really bad towards the last 3 years, Brittany's like, you need to go get some help. You need to figure out what is wrong with you. And, just to kind of get her off my back, I went to a physician, not somebody who is studied in therapy. I just went to my family physician. I go, listen, my wife thinks I'm depressed. I am a little bit depressed. Can I have some medication for it? Sure. She just gave it to me. There was no diagnosis. I just assumed.
She wasn't a psychiatrist.
I self-diagnosed myself. Yeah. I'm like, something's got to be wrong with it. I'm probably just depressed, which is true. I was very sad. A lot happened. COVID, pregnant. I lost my job. A lot was going on during the time of me going to see that doctor. Lost my job, going through COVID. I didn't know what I was going to do for money. My wife was pregnant. I was depressed. And so in my head, I'm like, that's it. I'm depressed. Doctor, give me something for depression. Oh, here's some Lexapro. Went on Lexapro, didn't do anything. And this was all going on. I was taking it before I was going into rehab. And then when I went into the facility and they broke me down, the doctors were like, let's go over your symptoms. Like sitting there, symptom. They're like, you're not depressed. You're bipolar. They're like, what are you on right now? I'm like, I'm on Lexapro and it's making me even angrier. They're like, you need to get off that. That's not for you. We have something for you. You're definitely bipolar to a T. Bipolar 2, it's called. So we're going to get you on new medication. And I got to say, since for the first time in my 45 years of life, because I have severe anger issues too, severe, to the point where like I literally have no patience for anything or anyone, and I don't like people. And if things aren't going my way, I'm going to get pissed off. It's just the way I was. I've been like that forever. And I've done it with my friends, my family, everyone. I fly off the handle. So for the first time finally getting on this medication, I was like, it took a week or two to get in, but I was in the facility, so I had no reason to get mad. But I was like, wow, like I just let things roll off my back. I've never in my life just like let things roll off my back, be okay with certain things not going my way. Like usually when things don't go my way, I get really angry and I take it out on my friends or my family. The anger issues that I have was insane. Like before I was on the medication, and the reason I would take it out on Brittany is unfortunately, she's the one I come home to at night, right? So during the day, and like I would leave, drive through the day. If I go to the grocery store, somebody pissed me off at the grocery store. Somebody pissed me off at the DMV. Somebody cut me off, right? And instead of solving those problems in the moment and being okay with it, I would store all this anger up throughout the day. And then guess what? I go home for dinner, and who's in my target line? Brittany. She didn't do anything. I'm just so angry with my anger issues that I would just take it out on her. And it was not fair. And I knew what I was doing. Now, mind you, the drugs were affecting me too at the same time. And if people don't know, with cocaine, the next day is the worst. Like you feel like absolute shit. Like you feel at the bottom of the barrel. You have zero serotonin. You are just angry and depressed. Anybody who's done cocaine will tell you that. The next day is brutal. It's weird why we do it for 2 hours of fun, and the next 48 hours is misery. But we do it. And unfortunately, and the only time that Brittany and I really have ever gotten angry is the next day after a bender for me. That's the only time I've ever had a shouting match. I've never done a sober shouting match with Brittany ever. But unfortunately, I was doing drugs so much that it was a lot.
Right, and that your natural irritability would turn into outright anger.
So I already have anger issues without the cocaine. Then you throw cocaine on there. Then you throw alcohol on there. Then you throw Lexapro on there. This was a fucking recipe for disaster. Like all these things. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know what was going on. Taking all that shit, it was not doing well.